We are live. You can start.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. On behalf of the International Federation of Kidney Foundations, the World Kidney Alliance, IFKFWKA, I welcome you to our first webinar on healthy food for healthy kidneys. I welcome our president, Dr. Siu-Fai Lui. We'll call him SF. He's fondly called SF, our president. I welcome Dr. Georgie Abraham, Dr. Kam Kalantar, Mrs. Jaya Jairam, Professor Dr. Tilakavati Karupaiah, and Ms. Vijayshri Nagarajan, who are going to be interacting and speaking today. So without much ado, I just want to tell you that our president, SF, will be giving the welcome address. But before that, I'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you who are on Facebook, who are watching it on YouTube, and who are here today. A very big thank you for joining us in our first webinar. I also want to welcome all our council members who are online and all our members also who are online today. And I have to say a special thank you to Mr. Shivashankar for having put this whole thing together. And of course to Mrs. Kausalya Padmanabhan for having inspired all of us to get started with the webinar series of the IFKFWKA. I also want to say thank you to all the members who have helped us here today. And SF, over to you. Thank you all. Can you unmute SF?
All right. Okay, you can hear me now. Right. Okay. Hello, everyone. SF Lui from Hong Kong. Welcome to all of you. I'm sorry that we can only meet online here, but it's good at least we're connected. I've begun to see quite a few more people coming in. I see Kam and everyone else coming. I'm trying to figure out who is joining us today. Can you hear me well? Can I? Yep. Okay. It looks as that we got a good turnout from India, and we got quite a few members from our IFKF here. Kam is here, and I think there's a couple of European guests as well, so that's good. Now, let me move on by sharing with you why we have this webinar and where are we going. I feel very honored and privileged to be able to work with the whole committee, the board member, IFKF, because we have a slightly different vision and mission. And I hope that we'll work together to achieve this, what we call eating smart and eating well for our kidney patients. We want healthy food to make the kidney healthy. So this is a program. It's a very tight program. We'll try to stay with the time. But we have constructed in a way that we'll start with a sharing by a transplant patient. To me, it's very important that we listen to the voice of the patients to understand what they actually need, what they wish to know, the difficulty they're facing with. Then we have Kam and Georgie as two nephrologists to share some insight with us in the future direction where we're going. And then that's very good that we have two dietitians who are going to give us some tips about how to eat well and from different perspectives as well. So this is going to last about 1.5 hours or so. Now, let me just say to you, because I've not met some of you before, just let me share with you, IFKF, International Federation of Kidney Foundation, was relaunched in July 2020 with a new title attached to it. That's World Kidney Alliance. The reason for that is we feel that it's not only just a foundation, but we need to work with patients. So we welcome patients group to join us. That's why we add on the World Kidney Alliance. Currently, we have about 30 organizations, including many patient groups, and especially a few from India as well, which is extremely good. Our vision is very clear. We want better kidney health for everyone, And we want to optimize the care of people affected by kidney disease. So our mission is going to lead a worldwide movement to promote better kidney health with primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention measures. But equally important is we want to promote optimal care for the patients. to maximize their health. Not only that they survive, but a good quality of health and longevity as well for people at high risk. So IFKF has actually relaunched with a few programs. We have our usual international meeting, regional meeting, and meeting like this tonight. As you know, IFKF is the foundation member of the World Kidney Day. We have a big event every year. And I was pleased to let you know that Kam has actually successfully negotiated with Nephron. So we will be part of the Nephron. We have 1/4 of the journal publishing related work from kidney health. But as you can see here, I highlight red is a special topic we'll be focused on in the next 1 or 2 years: renal nutrition, diet, and well kidney recipes. I think it's actually going to be more than 1 or 2 years. It's going to be a permanent feature for us. Why do we do that? Why do we have this topic? You may remember in the World Kidney Day in year 2021, we have chosen the title, Living Well with Kidney Disease. It's not just a matter of patients surviving, but we hope that, and we will help them to live well as well with the kidney disease. And this is a big challenge. The major topic that we put out was, we want them to live well. There are 4 special areas we need to focus. We need to clinical strategize what we need to do well. That's a patient-friendly lifestyle and diet. We need to manage the symptoms. Oh, my slide is jumping off by itself. We also want to look at the life impact they're faced with, ability to work, travel. But one of the things that we want to focus is dietary problem that we're faced with. And we want to strengthen their ability to cope with all this. So we have a very clear picture. It's a lifestyle participation of the patients. In particular, we want to focus tonight the patient-friendly lifestyle and diet, because a lot of patients are very troubled by the dietary restriction. Very quickly, I will share with you, last year we did a Living Well with Kidney Disease survey, and it was actually compiled by 4,000 patients from 6 different countries. We asked them a few interesting questions. We asked them, what problems have you been troubling you in terms of physical? Now, all of you probably know all this, being fatigue, pain, shortness of breath, and things like that. But I also asked them what psychological problem they're faced with. Equally, even more important, you ask them what has the renal failure, kidney disease impact on the life, ability to work and study, lifestyle change, dietary restriction. Because it's not just a physical matter that we want to look at, it's the whole pathway. To cut a long story short, I'm just going to show you 2 results that we find very interesting. One is out of 10 score, they score between 5.8 to 6.8. Okay, more or less from different areas, Bangladesh, Hungary, Italy, and things like that. Okay, so that is not too bad, but it can be better. We asked them what physical problem they're faced with. Of course, they almost all the centers, 7 centers, they pick fatigue as a top symptom. Sleep problem, pruritus, cramp. Okay, we all know about that, and food restriction. We asked them about the major psychological problem they're faced with. All 7 units that report to us, they're concerned about the future and anxiety. But I want to leave you with this most important slide. That is the impact on life. They tell us that they worry about the financial impact, ability to work, ability to travel, but they also worry about the dietary restriction as well. So I think that's the reason why we're focused on diet and all the related problems. Okay, so you can see here, all the foundation that report to us, quite a few actually got diet restriction in the top 5 list of things they want. As you can see here, India, Italy, India, Hong Kong, and Malaysia as well. So I think that's the reason why we want to do that. And we ask them of all things, what method to use most. Okay, you can see that first food restriction and all the other things actually concern them. So I put it to you, they have problem with eating and the diet, and they want to eat well, and they feel that if they can eat smart and eat well, that will help them a lot. So I hope I've actually framed for you why we have this focus on renal nutrition, kidney nutrition, diet, and renal recipe. So I'm very pleased to tell you that we are moving on to a very big project. This is called World Kidney Recipes. And the whole idea is that we should eat smart, have our patient eat smart, eat well, so that the kidneys can live long. Not only the kidneys live long, but the patient themselves live long as well. And to me, I also want to bring this term let us bring the joy back in eating for them, because I think most of you will agree that patients find it very miserable. You can't eat this, you can't eat that, you have restriction. Let's try to help them to enjoy life a bit more. So what we have actually done is, I'm very pleased to let you know that in July, we have actually commenced a project with International Society of Renal Nutrition and Metabolism. It's a joint project of IFKF with them. And the purpose is prolonged long-living kidneys. We have defined our project into 3 different areas. To me, I think it's most important that we engage healthcare professionals, the doctors, nurses, dietitians, to focus on renal nutrition, not just focus on the chemistry, the creatinine, urea, things like that, but also need to focus on the nutrition aspect. We'll be creating a kidney recipes, a kidney-friendly recipes that have worldwide recipes to make eating more interesting for them, for the patient and family. But I would also like to share with you, it is our view that's the most important. We work with the patients themselves, engage them, empower them, so that they can look after themselves. Just very quickly on these 3 different aspects that we're going to launch in the near future. We would like to engage the healthcare professionals. I see quite a few of you here today. I think it's very important. If the healthcare professional is not interested in this topic, then the patient will get nothing from us. We want to turn a concept and theory, which Kam, we're going to tell you a lot of this concept and theory. We need to put them into day-to-day practice so that patient can understand what we meant, what they can do. We can discuss the nutrition and diet that is good for a patient. There are a lot of guidelines, but I'll say to you, a lot of guidelines are sitting on the shelf. They're not being applied by the doctors or the nurses or the dietitians. We need to do that. So in the future, today is the start. In the future, we're going to launch quite a few webinars for the healthcare professionals. Kam and Angela Wang will put together very interesting topics that we share with the healthcare professional and have a very good discussion. I jump to the 3rd topic before I come back to renal recipe to end up with. The patient education is very important. Engage a patient, empower them to look after themselves. We must understand what actually matters to them. What do they need? We need to provide them with useful information, ABC nutrition, ABC of how to eat. The world is changing. It's not a matter of us telling what the patient should know. I think we should co-design and co-produce what we're going to share with the patient together, because they know best. It's not us. We're not the kidney patients. So in the future, there'll be a series of webinars. Today is the first one of this seminar that will have patients, healthcare professionals, all working together. Let me just very briefly just touch on the World Kidney Recipes that we're going to work on. It's a collection of recipes from around the world, which will be vetted and classified by our dietitians, so that we know we can define with this recipe, if you eat 1 portion, you will have eaten so many grams of protein or so many portion of protein, how much calories, how much sodium, etc. And knowing that what amount of protein you may be allowed to do or advised by a dietitian is, you can actually choose from this menu. For example, tonight you want to have some Indian food, you can look at the recipe and find one that you feel like and work out how much you can eat that portion. The key word that we want to put forward is not so much restriction, but is a positive approach to eating. And as I say, let's try to bring the joy back to eating for the patients so that they can enjoy eating and even enjoy cooking. So we have some idea. So I think in the future, we hope the renal recipe will be very appetizing, very tasty, looks good, look interesting to eat. We can be very creative. We can fusion the food around the world. But we have to keep our minds simple, in that they're simple and easy to cook, because patients are very busy, they may be working. I personally encourage home cooking for the whole family and work out how much they can eat from that family meal. They can do so. I already also acknowledge that some patients have to eat out as they're working. We need to teach them how to eat out very cleverly. So in the future, we'll be working with a lot of dietitians, studying how to exchange food, substitute foods, subtraction food, that actually makes things easier for them. They may not need to eat a lot of salt, but if we introduce herbs and seasoning, that'll be very interesting. We can have different way of cooking. So I'm very excited that we'll be working with a group of dietitians from around the world with this basic concept of how to improve eating and the joy of eating together. So it may be something like that in the future. In about 1 or 2 months' time, if you come to our IFKF website, you will have a world map, and you want to have some Indian food tonight, you click this door to Indian food or Hong Kong food or Australian food, and you have the recipes that's classified and have useful information for patients. We have actually started this project already. Actually, see Agnes here. So thank you very much, because we have asked all our members to submit 5 classical national recipes for us. This is from Hungary, and we'll present in a way that this is the ingredient, these are the preparation, how you cook it. This will serve 4 portions. This is the highest protein, low sodium diet. And for 1 serving, you have this type of nutrition in it. So it will be user-friendly for them to understand what is required. I already received the recipe from Italy. I actually, Alessandra, I don't actually see him right at this moment, maybe on the other page. And also from Turkey as well. So it will make life very interesting for a patient to not just have their own country food, but also they can try different things. And Hong Kong, we actually have a renal diet book, and there's a lot of Hong Kong recipes as well. I'm sure some of you quite like Chinese food as well. So that's what we're doing. I'll end up by saying one more thing. To me, I think it's important we work together. And I'll call upon all of you in different parts of the world to form a strong alliance of people interested in renal nutrition, diet, and recipe, by which I mean people like healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, dietitians. We need to include chefs and expert nutritionists. And most important, we must include patients as well. It's a teamwork. And there's a big gap because we don't talk to each other. We're not connected. 2 days ago in Hong Kong, I started this movement. I formed an alliance of Hong Kong Kidney Foundation, Hong Kong Society of Nephrology, Hong Kong Society of Renal Nurses, Hong Kong Society of Dietitians, and the Renal Patients Alliance, and a few master chefs as well. So if all of us do this around the world, we'll work as a team and close the gap of the knowledge that the patients need and how to help them to do it. Most important, we need to engage all of you healthcare professionals. We need to engage all of you patients to work together. So sorry, I've taken a bit longer. This is the photo that I had. We have this focus group of the first Hong Kong chapter. We also have focus group meeting with patients, understand what matters to them. It's so interesting to hear the story, how they actually cope with kidney disease. Sorry, I took a bit longer, but I hope I'll explain to you why IFKF has launched into this topic of renal diet and nutrition. We have very good cause. I've shared with you where we'll be going in the future. So I'll stop here and with that move on to, yeah.
Thank you, SF. Thank you very much. That was very, very interesting. And before I move on to the main speaker for today, one of the main speakers, I would like to just reintroduce you. Not only are you the president of the IFKF WKA, you're the chairman of the Hong Kong Kidney Foundation, and you're the co-program director of World Kidney Day Joint Steering Committee as well, which is a joint effort of ISN and IFKF WKA. SF is a kidney specialist. He's now retired. He received his training and worked in Manchester, London, and UK. He moved back to Hong Kong in 1988 to join the Chinese University of Hong Kong. He was a chairman of Hong Kong Society of Nephrology and Hong Kong Society of Transplantation. He has retained he led the development and operation of the Hong Kong Kidney Foundation, providing subsidized renal replacement therapy, charity, and education programs. He retained his interest and work in renal patient-related matters, renal diet, and rehabilitation of patients with kidney disease. He has received many, many honorary titles from the Hong Kong government and from people all over the world. So thank you, SF. Thank you, the president of IFKF WKA, for your introduction about IFKF WKA. So now we move on to Mrs. Jaya Jairam. Thank you, Mrs. Jaya Jairam. She's the project director of Mohan Foundation, which is multi-organ harvesting aid network. Armed with an engineering degree and a post-graduation, Jaya has been working in the corporate sector. At the young age of 33, she was diagnosed with end-stage renal disease, reasons for which were unknown. She was blessed with a second chance when her mother came forward and donated one of her kidneys. The experience helped her understand the trauma of those waiting for an organ and the dilemma of taking an organ from a loved one. Her gratitude fueled her drive for promoting and enabling organ donation in India, and she founded the Mohan Foundation's Mumbai Center in 2016. The foundation entered into a partnership with the Maharashtra government for augmenting disease donor transplantation, and they have saved and enhanced around 200 lives through counseling and facilitating for organ and tissue donations. Drawing from her own experiences, she felt the need for a strong patient support group that would not just provide a platform for exchange of first-hand learnings and experiences, but also to be unified voice of the patient community, representing their challenges and needs. So Triumph, Transplant Recipients of India and Organ Failure Patients, a movement to provide hope, was launched by Mohan Foundation in 2020 under her leadership. It is committed to transforming the quality of life of the patients through education, support, awareness, and advocacy. Presently, Triumph is a growing group with 500 plus patients and caregivers. So welcome, Ms. Jaya Jairam. Please, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Latha, for having me here. It was so heartening to hear Dr. SF talk about the need for the healthcare experts to come together and work with the patients and put together a kidney-friendly recipes. I would be happy to be a part of this in whichever way that I can, and I can speak for our patient support group also. I'll be happy to work with you all on behalf of the patient support group in whichever way that is possible, because ultimately it stands to benefit us. I wish there were such facilities or such information that was available way back in the. So I had my transplant in 2010, and when I was struggling with renal failure, CKD stage 5, none of the recipes would suit me. I was really struggling to consume any sort of nutritious food. I was constantly depressed about eating leached food, boil the vegetables, leach them. And it was a huge struggle for me. I can't describe what a huge struggle it was. I would meet the dietitians and it just wouldn't settle for me. The creatinine just kept rising, and though it was a very brief period, I did have my transplant immediately a couple of months later. So thankfully it was a very brief period, but it was a huge struggle for me. And such organizations like IFK, FWK, getting together all the organizations to put together such a recipe booklet would really, really benefit the patients at large. So thank you so much for doing this. All right, so I'm here to share about my experiences. I'm going to speak mostly about post-transplant, diet. So I would like to first start off with gratitude to my donor, my mother who donated one of her kidneys to me, the doctors and my nephrologist who all came together to give me a second chance and a much better quality of life. So this is a promise to take care. This is what I decided immediately after my transplant, that I make a promise to take care of this beautiful gift, and I will never take it for granted. So keeping this in mind, therefore, it becomes important to know post-transplant, what are the precautions from the point of food safety, water safety. So I'm going to speak a bit about the precautions and a bit about the need for balanced diet and exercises. I will mostly be speaking, drawing from my own experiences, because there are experts who will be sharing the do's and don'ts and all the information subsequently. So the initial couple of months or up to a year post-transplant, obviously the level of immunosuppression is much higher, and therefore the food and water safety that needs to be taken is, the need for that is, the precautions are very important. Like, for example, avoiding eating outside. For about a year, I didn't eat outside at all. It was all homemade food. It was freshly cooked. It was fully cooked. No undercooked or raw food stuff was allowed for me or for other transplant recipients in this part of the world. And it's always advised to cook all the food stuff, eat it hot, eat it immediately. And after about a year or so, you're given more liberties. You're allowed to have freshly cut salads, freshly cut fruits. Hygiene is very important, and therefore you can eat outside, but eat at safe places is what is advised. Avoid leftovers. If you have to have it, then later you're told after about a year or so, you can reheat it. You have to heat it well, just to make sure that all the bacteria are eliminated, no infection comes in, because you're on anti-rejection medicines, and initially the level of doses are so high that you're very prone to infections, and therefore this care has to be taken. Couple of things which I avoided as a kidney recipient. I was told to avoid pomegranate and grapefruit. I believe there are other fruits like pomelo, blood orange, black licorice, which are not, which are a no-no for a kidney transplant recipient, simply because it tends to elevate the drug level, the immunosuppressant medicine level in the body, which is undesired. So it's been 11 and a half years since my transplant, so I make sure that I avoid these fruits. It's needless to say, avoid street foods, buffet, and any food that is sitting in the open. And this is so for the entire period. As long as we live, we should avoid these things, because simply because you can never guarantee the hygiene or the that it's infection free. So after about a year or so, I did ask the doctor, when can I travel? When can I start taking a vacation? And of course, there was a lot of fear and apprehension, but my nephrologist kept saying, Jaya, the idea behind a transplant is to rehabilitate you. So get back to normalcy, do all that is required. Just make sure you take your precautions with respect to food, water, hygiene, etc. So travel on work, I started doing that. Just made sure that I used to go to a good hotel or eat out at a place where you can guarantee the food safety. I was allowed to eat anything. I still follow this. I have stuff which is freshly made. I used to even in the initial period request to meet the chef, and I used to request him or her if he or she could make it hot. And I used to explain to him that I have this condition, I'm a kidney recipient, and so I'm immunocompromised. Can you please help out? And they're always ready to help us out. They never say no. They at least no one has said no to me so far. While going out on a vacation, I've always so there was this huge apprehension. How do we plan this out? Should we carry homemade food? But then it's not safe either. It could go bad. So we then started planning vacations. There's these apartments are available. We started doing Airbnbs, and you get a variety of, you can choose what sort of a range you want. So anywhere, whether within India or outside of India, we started, because this was on my bucket list. At that point in time, after my transplant, we had decided that every year, one annual vacation is something that we will most definitely plan. And we have been doing that all this while. Just last year, we couldn't plan because of COVID, but otherwise it has been a religious thing that we've been doing. So we plan an Airbnb, we book at an Airbnb. And the first thing once we land up over there is to go collect go and make a trip to the supermarket and stock up. And I cook myself. So then that way, I still enjoy life while I can eat safe food. So this is what I wanted to share with you all about the first part, that is the precautions and food safety. It need not come in the way. Lead normal lives. Do not lead compromised lives. Please take your precautions so that you can continue to lead happy lives for a long time. Now I will speak on the next aspect. Perhaps this is more relevant to this topic over here. Importance of balanced diet and exercise. And I'm going to again speak from my own experiences and what I follow. Well, as kidney recipients, I have to repeat that we are on immunosuppressants, and these immunosuppressants have side effects. Immunosuppressants like tacrolimus, mycophenolate, they could give rise to hypertension, high cholesterol, triglycerides, high blood sugar. Again, steroids, they do increase the appetite. They tend to, you tend to gain weight while on steroids. Again, they can also cause a spike in the blood sugar and cholesterol and triglycerides. Could also end up with, there could also be bone problems. So these are things we need to be aware of as recipients. We once we are aware, we'll be more conscious about it. And that's why it's very important to be aware of these things. So what is the solution? The solution is balanced diet with regular exercise. It's very important to maintain a healthy weight, and we need to work actively to stay in the normal BMI range. Therefore, we have to constantly watch what we eat and how much we eat. Okay. Therefore, it always makes sense to go approach a dietitian, a professional from within the transplant team. Ask them to help you out to make a chart. Do not follow someone else's chart. The chart would be unique for you, because if I have to lose weight, then the diet and the calories will be calculated as per how much weight I have to lose. If I need to gain weight, the chart will be different. So it will be unique to every individual. And therefore, please go approach your dietitian and work a chart out for yourself. Okay. Some of the basic things as a transplant recipient or anyone who is who needs to protect their kidneys, I think these are the things that they need to follow. Low salt, low oil, low sugar. So I sometimes do switch from table salt to the pink salt. Perhaps that helps in hypertension as well. That experts may comment on this. But this is my experience. I also ensure that oil is low in cooking. So instead of 2 tablespoons, if it's written in the chart, I put only 2 teaspoons. Low sugar, I avoid sugar altogether because I have fruits, and through fruits, the natural sugar obviously is getting added to the body. So if I have to have sugar, I have the brown sugar instead of the white sugar, which is a refined sugar. So these are some tips, some suggestions. The fruits, of course, I did mention, I avoid grapefruit and pomegranate, which are available over here. But I do have rest of the fruits. I wash them, I peel them, I eat them fresh. I make sure that it's not sitting or it's not cut and lying outside. Any and all vegetables are fine to eat as long as they are cooked well and you have it hot. Or if you have to reheat it, make sure you reheat it in the microwave. Freshly cut salads are perfectly fine because I consume them every day. I start with a lentil-based breakfast. It helps me, the quantity is limited, but it keeps me going. It gives me the energy. My meals, I make sure that it's a balanced meal, i.e. I have 25% of a carb input, 25% of protein input, 25% salads, 25% vegetables. And I actually measure them in a cup so that I know that it's not imbalanced. Milk, I have pasteurized low-fat milk. I think it's important that it be pasteurized. Otherwise, again, you are prone to infection. In the evening, so that in between hunger, I do have small quantities of nuts, seeds, and berries. Small quantities, one teaspoon each. So I think broadly, this is how the balance is. I'm a vegetarian, so I won't comment too much on the non-vegetarian part. But I do have egg, and I have fully cooked egg, nothing undercooked or nothing raw. One thing which I make sure that I follow is I avoid any Ayurvedic products or any herbal supplements. Whenever I'm buying stuff, I do have a look at what are if there are any chemical additives, and I avoid them. So this is primarily what I look at. Having said that, I think it does take determination to follow this. But I do keep in mind, once again, I remind myself that I need to do this because somebody has given me a gift and I need to protect it. I need to secure it. It's for myself. And that gives me the determination to ensure that broadly, this is what is followed. Of course, there are cheat days. You're allowed to cheat once in a while. Please go ahead. You deserve it. You need it. You can celebrate. but do motivate yourself, do have a variety. It will be wonderful to have this recipe, detailed recipe booklet, which can, sometimes you just run out of food and it's just boring and mentally taxing to just have the same thing day in and day out, and what next, what next, what next. So it will be wonderful to have a variety to look at, especially if an expert has vetted these recipes. It will be so wonderful, and if we can have it Indian, Asian, and the way it has been discussed, it will be wonderful for all the patients. Another thing which I wanted to share is, if you're struggling with losing weight, do please consult your dietitian. Do not live with it. Set an achievable target for yourself. I was overweight by about 5 to 6 kilos, and I did set an achievable target for myself, say something like 5 kilos, and then you look at the next 5. So work with your dietitian to achieve the same. It is very much possible. Again, some tips: measure the quantities of foodstuffs with a cup, so you're not over serving it for yourself. There are also apps which sort of help you monitor the calories that you're consuming in a day. Okay, so like for example, I wear this Fitbit, and the app sort of helps me. I can input what, like for example, if I'm having 2 idlis in the morning for breakfast, and then I have a fruit at say 11, and then I have my meals, so I can input all of that, and at the end of the day I can know the amount of calories that I have consumed. And if I need to lose weight, then I need to burn out more than I'm consuming, and therefore create a net deficit, right? So this, you can easily monitor it, log your exercise done, and therefore you can. So healthy diet goes with exercise. It is interconnected. It's strongly interconnected. You can't just eat and not exercise, because then you're not burning out enough. Therefore, this balance is extremely important. Know how much your calorie, so empower yourself. This is very important. You should track, you should take things in your hand, be conscious about what you're eating, not just anything that comes on the plate or any quantity that comes on the plate. On those days that you feel low or down, it's okay. You can let go. You deserve it. Sometimes, you are confused. How do I start? I don't know. Try to have an exercise buddy who can keep motivating you. It could be someone in the family, could be a friend, could be another recipient who has gone through what you are going through. So have someone who can push you, who can motivate you, who can hold your hand, even on those days that you're feeling low and don't feel like exercising. Or go easy on yourself. It's okay if you don't want to do it on any particular days. But trust me, once you start feeling healthier, once you start, if you're obese, once you start losing that extra weight, and you start fitting into those jeans, or that pair of jeans that you were eyeing and was lying inside the wardrobe, it's a thrill, it's an achievement. You feel good about yourself, you start loving yourself, and that's when I strongly believe your blood sugar will come down, your cholesterol will come down, everything will be in control, and this will become part of your routine, and you won't give up on them. So I hope I've been able to share from a patient perspective. Is there anything else that you would like me to speak on, or I would like to end my sharing over here?
So thank you, Jaya Jairam. I think we'll have the question and answer later, so be with us. And it was a wonderful talk, and talking about your experiences. We're very grateful that you could come on our first webinar of the IFKFWK on healthy food for healthy kidneys. And as we move on, we'll learn a little more from the others, and the World Kidney Recipe is going to be a really, really, it's going to be very helpful for everybody who are on dialysis and also post-transplant. And, I think overall it's going to help everybody. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So now we move on to some words by a couple of very world-renowned nephrologists. And here I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Kam Kalander. Dr. Kam Kalander Kam, as we fondly call him, studied medicine in University of Bonn, Germany, and received MPH and PhD degrees in nutrition epidemiology from University of California, Berkeley. He was trained in the University of Nuremberg in Germany, SUNY Brooklyn, and UCSF medical schools. He is triple board certified in internal medicine, nephrology, and pediatrics. Professor Kam has published more than 900 scientific articles, authored many chapters, created 4 textbooks, and presented numerous grand rounds and other lectures in national and international conferences on CKD, dialysis therapies, and nutritional and preservative management of kidney disease, amongst others. He is a past president of the International Society of Renal Nutrition and Metabolism and co-chair of the steering committee of the World Kidney Day. He serves as editor-in-chief of the Journal of Renal Nutrition. Dr. Kalander's core focus is in nutrition and diet in the management of kidney disease and kidney health, as well as dialysis transition and therapies. He's won several awards and recognition, and we are really privileged to have him here with us today to say a few words to us. Thank you, Dr. Kam.
Thank you, Latha. Such a great pleasure and honor. After these 2 great talks, I'm going to try my best to see if we can stay on time. Dr. Siu-Fai Lui kindly asked me to present on sharing by nephrologists, diet, renal nutrition, and world kidney recipes. And I always call this a brilliant idea by Dr. Siu-Fai Lui. So it's important to note that the IFKF World Kidney Alliance is the co-founder of the World Kidney Day. Every year there is a theme. The theme of 2021 was living well with kidney disease. It still is living well with kidney disease. So we continue to celebrate this throughout the year. Another 5 months left. And also I would like to remind colleagues that if COVID Delta doesn't confound our plans, we'll have a meeting December 2nd and 3rd in Honolulu, Hawaii. This is a meeting per registration, and we look forward to seeing everybody there. Hopefully Delta surge will be very controlled by then. Now, if you look at here, World Kidney Day 2021, the theme was prevention, primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. If I highlight here the role of diet, nutritional status, as you can see for primary CKD prevention, it's obesity and healthy lifestyle. For secondary and tertiary prevention is if you have just early kidney diseases, or if you have more moderate kidney disease, it still says lower protein diet, ensure plants dominant diet, nutritional therapy. Also in this Lancet paper, recent Lancet paper, we highlighted this main figure, and look at here, so many times the keyword diet has been mentioned in the pathophysiology of the damage to the kidney. So if you look at also something that is for certain stages of kidney disease, the earlier to moderate stage is called low to very low protein diet. That means the range of 0.6 to 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight per day, which is low, and 0.3 to 0.4 grams of protein per kilogram body weight per day, which is very low. And these are also ranges that Kidney Disease Outcome Quality Initiative, known as KDOQI, in September 2022 has recommended. And the key number is 0.6. Now, is it too low or too high, actually? If you look at the kidney has the units called nephron. And these nephrons, there is blood pressure within very delicate structure of these nephrons, and the pressure leads to filtration. However, you can increase filtration or decrease. For example, if I open up efferent arterial, blood pressure goes down. If I tighten afferent arterial, blood pressure goes down. And lowering blood pressure is actually good because the less burden on kidneys, including kidney transplant, the longer these kidneys will last. That's the whole concept. And there have been many models. And this is once again to highlight the structure of the kidney and the delicate structure of the nephrons, and why low sodium and avoiding too much protein, especially animal protein, would help to avoid them. So those who have eaten a lot of protein right now and it's 1 to 2 hours after dinner, the amino acid surge has opened up their nephrons and has led to increasing burden to the kidneys. And look at this interesting study. Some 30 years ago already, this is an ultimate research paper published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1991, suggesting that if people receive infusion of amino acids, essentially we are mimicking high protein diet. What you see here, that the filtration rate of the kidneys goes through the roof, especially in diabetic patients. Now, in non-diabetic patient goes up too. That means in people who don't have diabetes. But if you have diabetes, this so-called hyperfiltration is even higher. Now, this is essentially one of the problems with giving a lot of protein to those who have diabetic kidney disease. That means we cause more burden on the kidneys. And if you have less protein intake, amino acid surge is lower, and there is lower blood pressure inside the glomeruli. Now, the MDRD study, which was a study was in 90s, it showed that initially, if you adopt a low protein diet, initially kidney function appear to get worse, but then over time, actually, the loss of kidney function slows down, as you can see. That means you can gain half a year, 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years longer longevity from this native or transplanted kidneys. Now, what type of protein is good? In the past, they used to say high biologic value. That means more animal-based protein. That was from 80s and 90s. Now we say 50% of the protein, at least 50%, should be from plant-based. So this is the old notion. This is essentially the new notion. And if there are concerns about problems with not having adequate biologic value, there are supplements such as keto analogs. India has, for instance, a number of companies, manufacturers of keto analogs. So what about calories? Calories should be 25 to 35 based on the goal. So calories should be adequate, not too high, not too low, as was discussed. Potassium, phosphorus, sodium should be within the target range. For example, one of the areas that had caused problems that says that if you eat more plant-based diet, it has potassium. I think we're trying to move out of that so that potassium does not allow, respiratory ratio does not allow us to miss on plant-based diet. Why? Because this is one of many studies suggesting that once the proportion of plants as the source of protein is above 50%, then the longevity in CKD, this is essentially mortality. Mortality goes down. So that means longevity goes up. So it's good to have higher and higher proportion of plant-based or plant ratio, plant to non-plant ratio. And this is also a recent paper. It's for those who would like to know where it comes from. It comes from American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, which is #1 nutrition journal, suggesting that in those with low eGFR, I mean CKD, it's better to avoid high protein diet, and it's better to avoid high biologic value protein, which is essentially meat, and it's better to adopt a plant dominant, we call it PLA, plant dominant DO or Play-Doh based diet, Play-Doh diet. And I really always follow these great events in India, and it's amazing that the plant dominant culture exists there. And if there is any concern about inadequate amino acids, there are always supplements without nitrogen, such as keto anabolics. So this is essentially the concept of plant-dominant low-protein diet, or PLATO. That means protein is 0.6 to 0.8, and 50% of the source is plant. And I'm going to show only one slide on dialysis, because until now I talked about moderate level CKD or having a kidney transplant. But what about dialysis? Those who are on dialysis, they need actually high protein diet. Look at here. This is a mortality curve suggesting that the lowest mortality is when protein intake in dialysis patients is around 1.2 grams per kilogram per day. So once again, that should tell us that there is such a thing as one diet is good for everybody with kidney disease. Doesn't probably exist. We need one size fit all approach. Doesn't exist. So for every situation and every stage of kidney disease, we have different approaches. Therefore, the word kidney recipes is going to be it's endless opportunities here with this brilliant idea of Dr. Siu-Fai Lui. We're going to create recipes for earlier stages, moderate stages, late stages, dialysis patients with residual kidney function, transplanted patients. So this is going to be one of our important goals and partnership that we'll have. And I'm going to quote, this is my last slide: when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. Wow, what a great culture, 3,000, 5,000 years ago. And also another similar quote: no disease that can be treated by diet should be treated by other means. So in summary, in all patients with moderate to advanced kidney disease, in order to prolong and preserve kidney, we need to embark on nutritional interventions, and we should try the natural food, plant-dominant food, and when it's needed, of course, supplements are also available. Dialysis patient, on the other hand, without residual kidney function, they need high protein diet. Therefore, it's not one size fits all. And conservative and preservative management of native and transplanted kidneys should continue to be the goal. And the word kidney recipe is a brilliant idea by Dr. Siu-Fai Lui. Will continue to provide us with immense opportunities started as of this year. Thank you very much. So it looks like I'm right on time for my friend and colleague, Dr. Georgie Abraham, right?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kam. Thank you very, very much. It's an eye-opener for all of us. And I'm sure that this webinar number 1 is going to have several more coming along with it, and you're going to be part of it and guide us. Thank you so much. So it was a privilege, and we're very grateful that you could spend time with us. I know it's really early morning there, but thank you so much for being here. Okay, so we move on to Dr. Georgie Abraham. Okay, he's from India. He graduated from the TD Medical College in Alleppey in Kerala, and he did his MD in General Medicine. He's an MRCP UK 1982 and an FRCP London and Glasgow. He's the founder president of the Peritoneal Dialysis Society of India. He initiated continuous ambulatory peritoneal dialysis, CAPD, as a treatment for terminal kidney failure patients in India in 1991 at Chennai, and expanded the treatment to other South Asian countries. He trained doctors and nurses from Middle East, Africa, South Asia in nephrology, transplantation, and CAPD. He's been on the governing as a governing council member of the International Society of Nephrology, the International Society of Peritoneal Dialysis. He is an executive member. He was an executive member of the steering committee of the World Kidney Day, and he's the editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Peritoneal Dialysis, and he's on the editorial board of the Nephrology Dialysis Transplantation. He's an advisory member to the Royal College of Physicians of London, and coordinator and host examiner for MRCP UK South Asia. He's won several awards I mean, just to name one, the Dr. Dimitrios Oreopoulos Canadian Society of Nephrology, because Dimitrios Oreopoulos was his mentor, and I think that award especially is very, very special to him. Professor Georgie Abraham has also won a lot of awards from India. He has now come out with his own book where he says, "My patients, my God." And he's a visiting faculty in several universities, a lot of publications, a lot of textbooks. And he's also established his own small business, the Madras Medical Devices. He's a founder trustee of Tamil Nadu Kidney Research Foundation, Tanker Foundation, which helps people with kidney disease. And run several dialysis centers reaching out to 650 patients. He's a trustee in the KV George Foundation, which helps and recognizes research work. I can go on and on about Dr. Georgie Abraham, but I think I will now ask Dr. Georgie to say a few words today. Thank you, Dr. Georgie.
Thank you, Latha, for that very kind introduction. And good morning to Kam, and also good evening to my colleagues in India and in the eastern part of the globe. I am really honored to be here. Let me just first tell you that I am what a lovely lady Jaya is. She's an incredible person. You know, she has been talking about her life story after a transplant for the last 11 years and the importance of medical nutrition therapy in keeping her well. And I think that she covered most of the things in a transplant patient, what should be done with regard to diet and what should not be done with regard to diet. So what are the challenges for India? This is what I just want to dwell upon. Basically, we have a population of 138, 1.38 billion people in this country, the second most populous country in the world. And we have poverty, as well as we have middle class and rich and very rich people in our country. And the diet varies from south to north, west to east, and in the center part of the country. I come from a state called Kerala, but I am now settled in Tamil Nadu, Chennai, and the diet varies between Kerala and Tamil Nadu. So the challenges are depending upon the socio-economic status, and the majority of the patients belong with CKD belong to the low socio-economic status. Their dietary knowledge is limited. It is very important in double quote. Their dietary knowledge is limited. They are total. They are total mainly about dietary restrictions. They are told about dietary restrictions. I'm sorry, and not about what to eat and what not to eat. And majority of them are quasi-vegetarians, even though they say that we are non-vegetarians. They don't eat meat every day. They don't take any non-vegetarian food every day. They may eat a non-vegetarian food 3 times a week. And the vegetarians are the milk vegetarians, the egg vegetarians, and the pure vegetarians are such. And they do not know what to eat and when they have early kidney disease and what to eat when they go on dialysis, because we have a scarcity of trained nutritionists in our country. I'm extremely thankful to Kam and his colleagues who took a major step a few years ago in getting us together at New Delhi. And also Kam has traveled across India talking about diet. And when we talk about diet, you know, our diet varies a lot from the Western diet, the African people, because I had been to Africa, and to Middle East and the Western diet. Dietitians and nutritionists are the cornerstone in advising patients on diet, not the nephrologists. Most of the time, they eat an unbalanced diet with a lot of salt in the diet. And there is a special preparation called rasam. It is a curry which has a lot of salt in that. And a lot of the people in some parts of the country have a morsel of rice with the rasam as their main meal during the lunch. And they are not aware of the nutritional count or the nutritional aspect, as Kam has already highlighted about high biological value protein. And they don't eat meat as usual, and the acids which they produce, we know that, you know, in the Western diet, they produce hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, and phosphoric acid. However, these are all meat-based diet, whereas in India, we have mainly vegetarian-based diet. I'm going to have my dinner today. I may have a little piece of fish, but the rest are all vegetarian in my diet. A lot of it is vegetable and salads. And in our publications, and we have highlighted that 68% of the middle class people on dialysis do have malnutrition, and this increases to 93% in lower socioeconomic class malnutrition. So malnutrition is a major issue in our dialysis patients and in our chronic kidney disease patients who are not on dialysis. And there is also seasonal dietary patterns. For example, the last few months, we had a lot of mangoes coming to the market, and they eat a lot of mangoes. And as a result of that, their potassium level may go up. I have my dialysis patients coming with the high potassium level, and speaking to them, they say that we ate 3 mangoes last evening. So it is seasonal. The food pattern is seasonal. So what we need to have a common medical nutritional therapy is the need of the South Asian countries, and especially diabetes. If you go to a dialysis unit in India and also a transplant program, you see that a lot of them are diabetics who are undergoing dialysis, both hemodialysis and peritoneal dialysis. And they may still be taking either oral hypoglycemic agents or may not be eating an appropriate diet. And there are many instances of hypoglycemia. That is the blood sugar going less than 70 in many of our patients, because religiously they take the diabetic medications, including insulin, but they don't eat for reasons which are not known to us. So the phosphate intake in our country, in some areas it is high, and most of the time it is less. So what we find is that the phosphorus protein ratio is usually less than 12 milligram per gram of protein. We don't eat much cheese. Our yogurt intake may be there, but our milk intake is also reduced. So the phosphate protein ratio is something which our dietitians look at to see that while consuming vegetarian diet, to look at that whether they are eating adequate high biological value protein. And they are also deficient in microelements such as B complex vitamins and other carnitine and other things. And they do have a lot of the lower socioeconomic people do have chronic infections. Tuberculosis, because 18% of the world population in India, but 25% of the world's burden of tuberculosis in India. So especially when the chronic kidney disease patients are exposed to the environment, either they have reactivation of tuberculosis or they have new tuberculosis infections, and this puts a burden on them in terms of malnutrition and also loss of appetite. So this is type 2 malnutrition, which is related to inflammation. So I just want to show you this book. Kam would remember that Kam wrote the preface for this. It is written and published some few years ago, involving the nephrologists from South Asian countries, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. So this book tells you about chronic kidney disease patients, transplant patients, hemodialysis patients, patients on peritoneal dialysis, and patients who are not on dialysis, and pediatric patients. So this is also available as a CD for people to look at that. And we haven't written a new edition because it still stands true for the people to follow it, including nutritionists. Now, so what are the solutions we have to look at? I said that problems are malnutrition. Next one is, why do we treat uremia with nutrition therapy? Nutrition is important because to slow down the progression of kidney disease, as Kam has very eloquently shown in a slide. Number 2 is to reduce the symptoms of uremia because of dietary imbalances. Third thing is to make sure that these patients consume enough food, and so that they don't go into malnutrition. So these are the 3 aims of nutritional therapy in malnourished patients or CKD patients on dialysis and off dialysis, and also in transplant patients. So how do we, with the World Kidney International Federation of Kidney Disease, how do we achieve these goals? We need to have trained nutritionists. We need to keep on educating people all the time. And also at the same time, we need to have different dietary patterns to be seen and looked at and advise the patients what to eat. I'm so happy that the Westerners, including the developed countries, Kam is a person who professes that vegetarian diet is good for patients, and vegetarian diet can be given to patients with chronic kidney disease so that they can also have high biological value protein. So I would stop my discussion on this and move on to the next speaker. And thank you for inviting me, Latha. And it's a great opportunity to speak to people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Georgie Abraham. It was a privilege to have you and Dr. Kam here today with us. So now we move on to our wonderful dietitians who are, going to give us a lot of light on how to take care of ourselves. So I'd like to introduce, I have the privilege of introducing Professor Dr. Tilakavati Karupaiah. Professor Tilakavati Karupaiah is Strategic Research Interests Professor at the Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences, Taylor's University in Malaysia. She was formerly Professor and Head of Dietetics Program, National University of Malaysia. A background in dietetics and nutritional biochemistry influences her research in Malaysia related to health and in disease, bridging human clinical trials to nutritional epidemiology to the food environment. Her data on cardiometabolic health is influencing Malaysia's newest dietary guidelines and dietary recommendations for fat consumption, with contributions also to the global dietary database. She contributes extensively as a researcher, educator, and nutrition expert in chronic kidney disease. Professor Karupaiah received the Joel D. Koppel International Award in 2017 from the National Kidney Foundation Council on Renal Nutrition USA in recognition for leadership practice and research activities shown in the field of renal nutrition. Her interest now is in preventing chronic kidney disease and the NCDs through food policy research. She's working with the INFORMAS, International Network for Food and Obesity, Non-Communicable Disease Research, Monitoring and Action Support Network for capacity building in food environment projects involving Malaysia and 8 other Asian countries. Capacity building is also driving her involvement in the Advanced Global Renal Interest course for dietitians. She is an expert consultant on several committees. She's published several papers in international and national journals. She has co-authored several papers with others. She's published several books. It's a privilege to have you, Dr. Tilakavati Karupaiah. Over to you. Thank you. Dr. Tilakavati?
Yes, sorry, I'm unmuting.
Yeah.
And looking for my slides. Just give me a minute.
Thank you. Welcome.
Let me see. Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, good evening to everyone. And I've been asked to talk on renal nutrition, diet, and recipes, giving an Asian perspective. Perhaps I should begin by talking about the keywords: renal nutrition, diet, and recipes. Renal nutrition, by definition, is the application of the science of human nutrition and metabolism to kidney disease, as opposed to kidneys' functional roles in the healthy state. Diet describes the food a patient needs to consume to manage this metabolic burden of kidney disease, and we describe it as a guide. Scientifically, it's in terms of expert guidelines, we single out single nutrients, such as the recent KDOKI Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics guidelines, which came out in 2020. Now, recipes denote pictorial concoctions to convince the patient that prescribed diet can be delicious. And I think that's very important. Now, let me move this here. Okay. Renal nutrition principles underline the basic guidance for dietary adherence in patients. And that's very, very critical for what we have to convey to the patient, enough messaging to promote dietary adherence. So everything comes with nutrition principles, and nutrition principles generally target across the stages of kidney disease. They target weight optimization, focus on aspects of protein and carbohydrates to promote dietary adequacy. And there are also aspects about limiting specific nutrients. And that's what we talk about, the fundamentals of nutrition. Now, there's essential questions that come in with the scope of this talk. Are kidney nutrition guidelines appropriate for Asia? Will standardized diets help patients? Will recipes help patients? Should patients listen to dietitians? And should dietitians listen to patients? I think this is very important. So let's talk about our Asian patients. Now, the aspects that we need to ask us: who are these patients? What do they eat? What kind of foods? How do they eat them? When and why? Now, we must not forget that Asia is a very vast continent, stretching from, let's say, China to Hong Kong, westwards towards right up to the edges of maybe Afghanistan and Iran, downwards to India. Now, food, that should indicate that the influences on food choice across this vast continent will be diverse depending upon regions, and there are specific factors that determine food choice: religious taboos, food traditions such as vegetarianism as prevalent in India, as well as non-vegetarian practices, which is higher towards East Asia, ethnicity, because vegetable choices differ according to ethnic groups, diversity of recipes that exist across regions, flavors, seasonings, as the intention of IFKF to establish a world recipe database. And also the fact that it's very important that Asia has got many festivals, and culture and religion is tied in with food choices for this region. Now, let me start with talking about one aspect that we have to recognize, that in Singapore and many countries in Asia, are you able to listen? Yeah. The whole family eats the same meal as the patient. This is a personal system we understand and deal with in menu planning for patient, irrespective of race, in multiracial societies, as evident in Malaysia and Singapore. Now, breakfast is often the first meal consumed outside the home in most Southeast Asian countries. And the environment outside the home is a vast food paradise. And for example, our dialysis patients have a habit of picking up their meals from outside when they come in for dialysis. Now, the aspect culture, fasting practices during the month of Ramadan is very prevalent, where we have a significant number of Muslim populations, and our patients do want to fast. Now, salt intake is known to be very high, particularly for the Chinese ethnic groups. That's influenced by the use of flavoring agents, sauces, soy sauce, oyster sauce, fish sauce, the use of preserved vegetables, and more so when meals are taken outside. Now, soy protein is very much embedded in the diets of East and Southeast Asians, and soy proteins offer a very nutritionally relevant dietary source of protein in vegetarian diets. So let's talk about what are the patient issues related to dietary adherence, because we want to know whether patients listen to dietitians. Now, during Ramadan, for instance, our patients are at high risk of hyperkalemia, hypophosphatemia, and fluid overload. And these are data that we draw from our clinics. Of course, the pluses are there's improved energy and protein intake during the period of Ramadan. Now, poor intake of fruit and vegetables is very much documented, particularly for the dialysis population, whether hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis. Then the other problem is that soy protein intake is highly favored in Asian meals, but these also carry a risk of phosphorus and potassium. But more so, what we are concerned about is a high potential, or rather the potential for a higher sodium intake coming with the number of flavoring and seasoning agents used in constructing the menus that include soy protein. Now, the problem that we also encounter is diet monotony. We observe, particularly in dialysis patients, the tendency to follow a safe meal plan as what you see here. This is a typical chicken rice meal that a patient consumes every day of the week, because in his words, this is safe, it meets nutritional guidelines, and prevents them getting into problems with the diversified diet. Such monotony also affects the intake of energy and protein. It's been shown that a 5-point increase in dietary monotony is associated with a drop in calories and some drop in protein intake. Now, there's also a reaction that we notice in patients. It's called, this reactance is in terms of forbidden foods, which Dr. Georgie talked about, mangoes. And we see this even in our country. A beloved fruit becomes a killer, such as the durian. And during the fruit season of durian, many of our patients have blood potassium spikes and greater chances of them landing up in hospital. Now, what about recipe books? Are they of use? Now, we have been we have been very active in producing recipes. These are examples of recipes produced by government hospitals. But the problem with this is that these recipes represent a single meal choice rather than a total daily meal plan. And very often recipes promoted through books like these are very high in sodium, potassium, and phosphate, which is actually supposed to be restricted as per the nutritional guidelines. Now, on the other hand, we do not have enough work done in terms of producing patient-friendly material that is specific to client needs. And that's very critical, as shown in the survey of US dietitians. And I think I find that very similar to our Asian scenario, that patient education delivery to achieve dietary adherence will depend upon whether patients receive practical advice, where the education is delivered in phases as they gain knowledge. In terms of the need for dietitians to listen to patients and prioritize information that should be given, where patient groups are diverse, then there's a need to cater for these individual needs, and also not forgetting that the quality of information required is very much important to promote literacy in patients, health literacy. And very often patients tend to be confused with information that doesn't seem to sync with what they experience. Finally, at the end of the day, if education material is not current and cannot be digested by the patient, then health literacy cannot be achieved. So let's talk about negotiating with patients. So what is necessary to promote dietary adherence? And that would require understanding foods, customs, food risk, and health risk. And I'm going to detail some of this based on what we have found. We looked at dietary patterns in patients linking to nutritional risk. These are dialysis patients. And we found 4 major patterns. Patients who typically consume home food, which represent a diverse group of food groups in their diet, compared to 3 other patterns, which were basically eating out. And we found that patients who were highly adherent to the home food pattern had the lowest malnutrition score as measured by the MIS, the malnutrition inflammation score, compared to higher scores for those who were less adherent to the home food pattern. And adherence to the home food pattern also tied in with a lower dietary monotony compared to those who were consuming or rather eating out. All these patterns, these 3 patterns, indicated dietary monotony. So putting in a balanced diet, this is what we are talking about in population nutrition to the general population. Balance your diet to achieve your nutrients. And the same message goes for our kidney disease patients. We have to strive to get the patient to fit in all food groups to achieve their nutrient targets. Using the same dietary pattern approach, we look at nutritional risk in terms of serum phosphorus levels for the same hemodialysis population. And we understand that dietary phosphates come from carbonated beverage as seen in research from Japan or Western countries. But what we found that the culprit was basically what you call milk made with condensed milk or dairy creamers. These 2 have a high degree of the phosphorus additives, which are highly absorbed. Now, going to the specific of preparing patient education material, which should be relevant to local foods consumed. In current times, the most recent KDOKI AND statement on phosphorus, statement 6.3.2, recommends that adults with all stages of kidney disease or post-transplantation, it is important to make decisions about phosphorus restriction, to consider the bioavailability of phosphorus sources, be it from animal, vegetable, or additive sources. Now, in 2003, we produced this gray booklet based on patient data meal frequencies, and we picked up foods that are relevant or rather reflecting the nutrition transition that is sweeping across Asia during the 1990s. Instant noodles, sandwiches with tin sardines, baked beans, tea prepared with condensed milk and what we call non-dairy creamers and non-dairy creamers itself. All these had varying phosphate content. But in 2018, in response to the KDIGO guidelines, which more or less similar to the 2020 statement, this blue book, we revised. We found that patients were still dependent on all these foods, the nutrition transition foods. But we added that these were foods with high sources of dietary phosphorus, which is easily absorbed. But we made 2 essential observations. The first is the time period of transition from 2003 to 2013, the volume of Coke had decreased, which allowed Coke to appear to be a low phosphate food. But we still reserve opinion on recommending this as a drink for patients because this is basically phosphorus additive. Now, the second aspect was the non-dairy creamers. In 2003, we were actively promoting the use of non-dairy creamers because we saw that this was low phosphate. But in 2018, we revised this, even though the content was low, these were basically dietary additives, phosphorus additives, which is contra-recommended. Now, moving to the aspect of Ramadan fasting. We found we did a study that looked at post-Ramadan, even 1 month post-Ramadan. And we found that although there were temporary changes, there was no detrimental nutritional risk. But on the other hand, we explored the experiences and perceptions of dialysis patients in a qualitative study. And we showed that we found that the health-seeking behavior of patients was not interested, they did not seek information from dietitians, and they rather depended on the internet to answer their interests. Now, they were interested in looking at how to increase energy intake during the fasting, during the breaking of fast period, how much of protein and high phosphate foods. But the access to diet, they were not interested in asking dietitians for this advice. Finally, let me talk about health literacy framework, which is very important in terms of promoting compliance or dietary adherence, and particularly for the Asian countries. We specifically looked at nutrition literacy. We found this limited to about only, we found that nutrition literacy was limited in 46% of dialysis patients, and this was associated with older age, low educational status, and patients who came in were, or rather, new to dialysis. Dietary adherence rate was only about 35%. Nutrition literacy predicted dietary adherence. And why? Because of poor self-efficacy and poor self-management skills, indicating that it's important that nutrition literacy enhancing strategies be employed when we talk about promoting dietary adherence in the dialysis population. So finally, I would like to answer the same questions that I raised earlier. Are kidney nutrition guidelines appropriate for Asia? Yes, but interpretation is required, and we need dietitians to be well tuned to what are the changes that are required. Will standardized diets help Asian patients? No, because food practices vary and diets should be translated to local contexts and settings. Will recipes help patients? No, they are just eye candy. Should patients listen to dietitians? Yes, patients need to achieve nutrition literacy to achieve dietary adequacy for better health. And lastly, and very important, should dietitians listen to patients? Yes. Patients' food habits determines health risk, and education tools should be designed accordingly. Now, with that, I would like to rest my talk. Thank you for listening. Much of what I've talked about is not possible without the knowledge we gain from our patients. And we have had several investigators involved here to generate the kind of data that you see here. Thank you. And I would like to also promote that Dr. Georgie talked about education for dietitians. We have launched the GRID program, accessible for dietitians all over the world and very much affordable for dietitians from low to middle income countries. Please, I hope dietitians take this course. It's advanced, it's equivalent to a postgraduate education. We've launched the first module. The second module will be out in another 2 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tilakavati Karupaiah, for that very enlightening talk. I'm sure that it's going to benefit all of us, and we want you to be part of our movement as well. And we want you to help us with our World Kidney Recipes, and we want you to be on board with IFKF-WKA. Thank you so much for that. I'll move on to our last speaker, Mrs. Vijayshri Nagarajan. Welcome, Mrs. Vijayshri Nagarajan. She is the head and chief dietitian at MGM Healthcare in Chennai. She's done her BSc in Nutrition and Dietetics. She's done her Master's in Food and Nutrition. She does nutritional assessment. She prescribes diets, diet counseling, enteral and parenteral nutrition care, training of staff and students, nutrition researches and education, awareness programs, and she's organized a lot of conferences. She has several publications to her name. She's done a lot of radio programs and reached out to thousands of people through her advice. She's done clinical research, presented and participated in several national and international conferences. And she is going to help us in our diet, help us in IFKF-WKA Wild Kidney Recipe. Thank you so much for being with us today, Ms. Vijayshri Nagarajan. Over to you.
Good evening to all and good afternoon to some people. And thank you, Latha ma'am, for this introduction. And first of all, it is my pleasure to be part of this webinar. And I feel very proud to work with Dr. Georgie Abraham for more than 10 years. I'm working with him, and all the knowledge and the freedom which he is given towards renal nutrition and dialysis, renal transplant is, I cannot describe it in words. Thank you, Dr. Georgie Abraham, for his opportunities and the knowledge sparing skills. Thank you, sir. And today, I am talking about the healthy diet for healthy kidneys from the Indian perspective. So, what is Indian diet? One second, let me, yeah. So, this is the healthy diet. Sorry. This is the healthy kidneys record. Eating a right for better glycemic control, eat the right amount and right type of protein, choose and prepare food with less salt, sodium, phosphorus, and some of the minerals. Beware of processed food and eat healthy, heart healthy eating. So first of all, Indian diet, we eat less, but if you see the total calorie of our meal, it will be very less. And if you see the balance of the meal, we eat more carbohydrates, very less protein, and the fruits and vegetable groups will be very less. We eat high glycemic meals. Our glucose load is very high. We don't distribute our glucose load throughout the day. And there's always, the simple carbohydrate and complex carbohydrate. And we are sweet lovers. As Dr. Kalander said, Diwali, beware of eating fruit. It is actually beware of eating sweets on Diwalis, not fruits. We don't eat fruits on Diwalis. And our patients don't follow up with the dietitians. That's the major problem we are facing in India. We give counseling, we give diet plan, we give all the materials they want, and they disappear with that, and they'll never come back to us. Whatever happens to their condition and their lab values, they never come back to us. Thanks to Dr. Georgie, he always refers whenever he finds something wrong with the patient in nutrition. Immediately he calls us and refers the patient to dietitians. So what we have to do, from the Indian perspective, so eat recommended calories using all food groups, reduce glycemic index of the meal, distribute carbohydrate load throughout the day, and get a personalized meal plan as per your requirement. That is what very simple thing which we have to do it. So how to reduce the glycemic index of our meal? We are talking about glycemic index of individual fruits. But we Indian, we don't eat food throughout the day. We are depending on our 3 major meal, and we don't eat any snacking or mid-morning snacks or evening snacks. It's very, very rare. And so I have given you 3 pictures. You can see all the 3 meals are equal calories. And if you see the balancing, and if you see the food groups involved in each meal, the first picture is what currently we Indians are eating. As Georgie sir was telling about rasam, this is actually curd, yogurt. They just mix curd with rice and eat with some pickle which is high in sodium. And or otherwise they eat rice with bowl of rasam and again some pickle. So this particular meal is what more than 50% of the Indian packed lunch is. So this is where we are making mistakes. So we have to reduce. This is very high glycemic index meal. So we have to train our patient to how to reduce the glycemic index of the meal by adding little fiber in it, and by adding protein to the meal, and try to avoid as much as processed food from your meal, and use little bit of vitamin C like lemon juice or a vinegar, which can slows down the conversion of starch from sugar. So these are the tips and the instruction and helps which we can give it to our patient to control your blood sugar level, because uncontrolled blood sugar level is the major cause of kidney disease as far as India is concerned. And we all know that in the India is the most diabetes people in India. So this is how we have to balance our meals, and we have to teach our patients. These are some of the kidney recipe, kidney friendly recipes, because see, most of the Indian diet, we are cereal and pulse eaters. We don't eat too much of meat or too much of milk and milk product. Everything is cereal and pulses for us. Is that there is a debate whether the quality of protein in pulse is good or bad, and how to make it cereals and pulses, whatever protein is there, how to make it improve the bioavailability. So these are the things which is in debate, but with simple recipes, homemade recipes, which we are daily doing. Every Indian home, they eat dosa every day. Every Indian home, we eat idli every day. So we have to give options, give menus. Same dosa, how they can make it with other sources of cereals. See, we are blessed with millets. Indians are blessed with millets. We have plenty of millets available, and all are nutritious. The millets are, you all know, millets are rich in fiber, rich in iron, rich in some of the micronutrients, which may be absent in rice. So we have to teach them to use these millets in their daily diet to control the sugar level, as well as variety to the diet and micronutrients intake. So if you see, this is made of jowar. You can use millet, the small millets, the ragi, the finger millets. All those millets can be mixed with pulses. The pulse we use mostly for this dosa and idli are black gram dal. So the proportion should be 3:1. Three proportion of cereals and 1 of pulses. So what generally we do is, we grind it together, and we allow for fermentation for more than 8 hours. So this is where the traditional Indian cooking is very, very good. So we eat mostly steamed food. We use very little oil, and we use a lot of fermented and germinated foods, which is more health benefit, like the probiotic, and the combination of cereals and pulses improves the quality of protein from the pulses, like legumes. So these are the small informations and recipes we have to make it and give it to the patient, so that they have variety to choose. The problem with the diet prescription is, we only prescribe what to be taken and what to be avoided. So with the available, the allowed the food groups, the patients are struggling to choose and struggling to take their regular food, and what happens is their food intake is coming down, because there is no variety, there is no taste. They have to avoid certain things. So these are the consideration you have to see when you are planning a meal or a diet plan for a patient. So I strongly suggest that kidney recipes can really help patients to have better food intake, and that improves the quality of life. And see the health benefits of these recipes. This is another recipe. This is for North Indian people, where they eat rotis, the chapatis. So we all know this wheat protein is not of good quality protein. So to replace wheat, or reduce the quantity of wheat, we can add the millets and other cereals like jowar and the grams, the legumes, so that the amount of wheat is coming down, and also you are adding multi-grains, and the proportion of cereal and pulses, which should be 3:1, is a it's a good combination, and the quality of protein improves. And again, the micronutrient, high fiber, the glycemic index of these dishes are less, and it improves the satiety of the patient who are obese and who want to reduce weight. So these are the menus which really helps. And coming to the salt instruction, so this is what the research says, that 77% of the salt sodium consumption of us are from the processed food. See, now the Indian kitchen also slowly they are filling up with the processed food. We really don't go out and eat often like the Western countries, or we don't use too much of these sausages like the Western countries. But nowadays, in the name of masalas, we are spice eaters. In the name of masalas, there are too many processed masala products available in Indian market, which are all high sodium content, high phosphorus, and lot of additives is added to the these masala items. So this is where we have to educate the patient about the sodium intake through processed food. And we also have pickle, which we use with all the food items which we eat, whether we are eating rice, whether we are eating dosa, whether we are eating even some of the upma and all those things, we use this pickle. So this is high concentrated salted dish. Even if you consume 1 teaspoon, it gives huge amount of sodium. So this is where we have to change our usage of Indian foods. Same food with different ingredients. And if you see, only naturally there are 12% of sodium available in natural food also, because people think that sodium is only from the cooking salt. There are almost all the food groups, particularly the milk and milk products, the green leafy vegetables are very rich sources of sodium. So we have to educate the patient about all this, naturally available sodium, and whatever the sodium amount is allowed to them is inclusive of all the table salt which they use, and also the natural salt available in the food sources. And some of the tips we give to the patients, to use herbs and spices, which is easily available in India. And we tell them to read the food label if at all they are using any processed food, and avoid salt substitute, because it's in India there is something called Himalayan salt. Nowadays, the Indian market is selling Himalayan salt is very good for the heart. So Himalayan salt is nothing but it is a potassium chloride. So many people, even some of our dialysis patients also come and ask us whether we can go for a salt-free, sodium-free salt. So we explain them that is, potassium is present, instead of sodium. So it is more dangerous for the dialysis patients. So these are the things which we have to educate on the patient. And we will ask the patient when they are going out, to eat meat and fish. We will advise them to choose which is healthy. See, we really don't advise not to go, outside and eat. We do give them the chance of, freak out 1 or 2 days in a month to go out and eat, restaurant food. But we do give choices. What are the food items you can choose in the restaurant?
We have to move on, Dr.
Yeah.
Vijayshri. Yeah.
Yeah. And finally, processed food is already, Dr. Tilakavati spoke about processed food, the additive phosphorus, and how to try to avoid it. It's really comparatively easy in Indian cooking, to avoid these processed food, and we have to educate them. And if you see in the so not only processed food, even the bakery foods. We used to see sometimes when we go for rounds in the dialysis unit, we used to see that the patients eating biscuits, full packet of biscuit. Then because they feel it is easy to carry and easy to eat. So we have to educate them that is high in phosphorus. So you should not have a full packet of biscuits, and those processed baked foods to be avoided, for phosphorus. And finally, the heart healthy diet, the portion size, as per the caloric requirement. Eat more vegetable and fruits. Even with the dialysis patient or kidney patients, we are encouraging them to eat more vegetable and fruits, which is beneficial for them. Select whole grain, limit unhealthy fat, choose low fat sources, and reduce the sodium in the diet, and avoid or eat very rarely those foods which are poor in nutrient content. And thank you all. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Vijayshri Nagarajan. I think that was a very enlightening talk about Indian diet, and I'm sure people all over the world will also benefit from your talk. And I think each one of you has shared your thoughts and ideas and your knowledge with us, and we're very, very grateful for that. I would ask our president to maybe take over the question answer. So maybe if there is any question, if you can see it in the chat box, we would request you to ask questions. So I think one of them is that I'm at stage 5 kidney patient. Oh, I think these are all specific questions. Maybe what we can do is you could write to info@ifkf.org for any specific questions, and we can pass it on to our speakers. SF, can you take over quickly and just summarize everything? SF, you have to unmute. SF, we can't hear you. I think between the speakers, if there's any question that you want to ask each other, this would be a good time. Doctor, is there any question that you want to ask?
So while I think while SF is resolving this technical issue, so let me ask colleagues from South India and other places where the vegetarian diet is more supposed to be more predominating. Now, not everything that is vegan based is healthy. Let's say I always use this example. I say sugar.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, so SF is back. So SF, I was just wondering how to avoid unhealthy parts of vegan-based diet. And I think our last speaker actually mentioned a few things about like masala having all these added preservatives, right?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not quite sure why my mic actually gone off. Let me by saying thank you everyone so much for contributing. I think I must apologize and be responsible for putting so much on the plate that actually make everyone indigestion, because each talk by itself could have been 30 minutes. I think we should look at it as a tasting menu today. We got a taste of everything. I think we'll review how we could do this better with the forthcoming webinars in different ways, because each topic is so important. Maybe because of time, let me just sum up by saying that we heard so many different aspects of the renal nutrition, things like that. It was so good to start with Jaya giving us a patient's experience, as I put it at the beginning. And then Kam discussed some of the diet, especially plant-dominant diet and things like that. That actually need an hour's conversation, I think, and discussion and things like that. And I think Georgie mentioned a very important point about you may be too focused on renal nutrition and end up with malnourishment. That's very important. In fact, a lot of people suffer from that. And then we have Tilakavati talk about the 5 different questions. They're very interesting. They're very important. How to listen to patients. I fully share your view about the use of recipe. I hope that will work with you and look at recipe in different things. Because when I look at the recipe diet, they're too glossy. I fully agree with you. This is not how patient eats at home. Yeah. This is not the way to live. But I think we can make it home cooking and use those things and give them advice how to eat well, use of herbs and other things. And I think Vijayshri also share with us some of the things. So there's a lot of knowledge there, and we couldn't cover everything. Well, 21 minutes over late. May I suggest that everyone is very long, and then we will invite all of you again. I think we need to some thought about picking up 1 or 2 specific topics in the future to talk about, and maybe some regional interests as well, because it's clearly quite different. Each region have different regions. Yeah. But let me just thank all of you once again. Let me thank everyone who joined us tonight. I see a lot of names. It looks like really international name list from us. Maybe before I stop, then I saw Angela Wang, the president of International Society of Nephrology, Renal Nutrition, actually came in. Angela, you still here? Angela? Can we unmute Angela? No, she might have left. She actually did. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Depends on what time it is where she is.
Yeah, she was actually, yeah. But anyway, I think we probably don't have enough time to answer specific question, unless there's some burn one.
Dr. Lui, I would like to mention that since both Dr. Georgie and Vijayshri gave a lot of opinion on patient consumption, it's a pity that all this data is missing. That there has to be a way of collecting and extending this about Indian diets, the sources of phosphorus, patient behaviors. I think that's very much important to document, because if we want to grow nutrition knowledge for dietitians, for instance, if you don't collect and formalize that into an educational pathway, then that's not growing knowledge. You need that. And both have given personal opinions, but it's important that if they can work on a platform to bring that together, it'll be very valuable.
Yeah. There's a lot of work. I think tonight we heard so many different experts. And when I talked to a dietitian 2 nights ago, everyone acknowledged there's a big gap. There's a big gap in everything. And I think IFKF can only take it step by step and fill in the missing information and the connection between all the parties, and especially with the patients. So it's a long journey. Kidney disease is a lifelong journey.
Yes.
Same with renal nutrition.
Yes. And Nesaf, there's been some questions from Mr. Faisal, which we will look into and answer later. There are a lot of people who would like to ask a few questions, and maybe we will make notes and send it on to you so that we can respond to them. Okay. Yeah. But on behalf of IFKF WKA, I would like to say we're really grateful for all your participation, Dr. Tilakavati, SF, Dr. Kam, Dr. Georgie, Ms. Vijayshri, and Jaya, Ms. Jaya, for sharing your experiences, for opening out our minds and our hearts, and expanding our knowledge about diet, which is very important. We're all lay people, some of us here, and we have a lot to learn, but we've all been caregivers, and some of us are still caregivers. So it's been a very beneficial webinar, number one. And I'm sure that we have to say thank you to Kausi and to Shiv. Shiv, can you reveal yourself? Maybe we can see you, and we can say thank you to you for having managed this whole thing. We look forward to your...
Just a minute, I'll come back.
We just want to say thank you.
So Georgie, say hello to you. Kam, hello.
Yes. And we want to say thank you to all the participants.
We need to
and all the people who have checked in to listen to this talk, our first webinar. And this is the start of the webinars, and Kausi and SF and Kam and all of us will be organizing many more, hopefully one every month, under the guidance of SF and Kam and Dr. Georgie. So thank you one and all.
Yeah. Can I leave you with last message? Old wine, new bottles. Old food, new ways. We're moving forward.
Yes. And there is Shiv. Thank you, Shiv. Shiv Shankar, you've done a great job. Kausalya, I don't think we've seen your face, but thank you very, very much to each and every one of you and all our viewers. I'm sure you've learned a lot today. Good night and thanks a lot.
Yeah, we'll meet up again sometime.
Good night.
Yes. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Jaya, good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Georgie, how's your wife, Reena?
Dr. Georgie, unmute, Dr. Georgie.